I first met Dick Gregory in Milwaukee, about 1966, I think, maybe 65, I'm not sure. And we were marching um, essentially to allow blacks to move into the suburbs of Milwaukee. And he would come up from Chicago to lead those marches for Father Grappi, who was leading those marches. And I and my friends, my fellow priests, we were all young priests, we'd drive out to support Jim Grappi in his effort to do what he was doing, because he was getting a lot of heat from the government as well as his own church, you know. It was too radical or whatever. We thought he was doing great. And so we went out there and joined that. So that's when I first met Dick. It was, but you know, just hello, nice to meet you. He was at the top of his business of comedy, where he actually integrated the stage for the black community to bring on the talent of Richard Pryor and Dave Chappelle today. I think that's the logical line of the talent, because that's what Dick opened, that stage for black comedians to be able to really do well in the United States. And I think he's credited with that pretty easily. Wonderful man to be with. After I left Freedom from Hunger in about 1973, I went to work for Dick Gregory for 3 years. There were two issues we worked on primarily. One was the reopening of the study of the killings of Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy, and John Kennedy. And Dick was very devoted to that, along with Coretta Scott King and a number of other Scott leaders, David Abernathy of the SCLC. And my job was to be an aide to Dick Gregory to do this opening, and it eventually did work. But we won the battle and lost the war, because the U.S. government did re-examine the assassinations of those three, but they buried them quickly and got rid of it. So we won and kind of lost at the same time. And the other one was in about 1975. I was on a shuttle next to, I think it was Dan Rather. I'm pretty sure about it. It was Dan Rather. And I was going up to see Dick Gregory, and I said to him, I think it was Dan Rather. And I said, Mr. Rather, what do you think of Dick Gregory? And I work with him, and I'd like to talk to you about him and what we're doing. And he kind of said we're kind of leery and weary of Dick Gregory. And I thought, I should think about that. So I didn't tell Dick exactly what the journalist, it was Dan Rather, I didn't tell him. But what I thought to myself, that's a signal that we ought to move Dick back into the center of the politics of the country, where he wanted to be and where he belonged. And he had he had always been a runner. He had ran in college. He was a great runner. He ran once. I met him in Washington when he ran from, I think, Detroit or Chicago to Washington, D.C. in Bethune Park. He closed there, and that's when I said I was going to work with him. He was always a great runner. So in 1975, I started talking to him about the bicentennial, and he caught his imagination immediately. And I said, what we could do around that, Dick, I think we ought to do something. You could do something special for the country that'll be meaningful. And he thought about that. And so one time I was up at his house, and running was easy for him to do. There's no question about that. And I said to him, why don't we steal the bicentennial somehow? Why don't we just go ahead and steal this bicentennial somehow? And he said, well, I'm a runner. And I said, well, let's use that talent. Why don't you run? Maybe he thought up, maybe I thought up, I'm not sure. I don't remember. But one of us came up with the idea of Dick running literally, physically, from Los Angeles to New York, and timed that out from April to July 4th, so that when he entered New York City, he would enter in the morning. We'd get, the New York Times to cover it and so on. And all the politicians who supported Dick in New York, which was pretty wide support, that could happen. And so I became the fundraiser for it. I think I raised about 90,000, something like that. The youth project, the Margie DeBankin helped us. A number of people came to our help. Danny Sheehan, a great lawyer, Bill Davis, a Jesuit priest, and so it it really was pretty easy to put together because Dick was when he did things as with a certain number of people, but he knew how to be economic and forceful, and so we put it together. All the comedians in the known world at that time were at that event. I never realized they all talk at the same time. They don't listen to one another. It was very enjoyable to watch about 15 comedians all talking at one time. No one listened to them. It was kind of amazing. But Dick kicked it off at Tom Bradley's office, and it was a great send-off. And he ran 50 miles a day, 25 in the morning, 25 at night. And as he ran across the country, I was the front. I would, whatever town he was going to next, I would alert the Quakers or the Unitarian Church or a politician. It was whatever. That was my job, try and find support as they went. And so we did well. We recruited Muhammad Ali, which I'll tell in another story, at the Jimmy Young fight, and that worked. St. Louis we went through, and that was a big one because Dick is from St. Louis originally. That was a great one. Reg Petty was there helping out. Number of governors. It was working nicely. Dick was talking about world hunger, domestic hunger, as he went across the country. And we were building him back into the center of the politic of the country. And it was working. It was working for him, working for me. We were pretty happy about it. So we get somewhere around Ohio. I think Governor Celeste saw Dick, gave him a nice celebration in Columbus. And at that time, the United States was planning the tall ships into the Brooklyn or somewhere in New York, where the tall ships would come in from all over the world and be a beautiful sight for people to see. And we were all for that. But we discovered that there was a tall ship coming up from Chile. That was a torture ship. It was called the Esperanza. And that beautiful ship had been used as a torture ship in the takeover of Allende being toppled and Pinochet taking power, aided by Kissinger and the American forces. And I told Dick, I said, we really shouldn't be supporting that. And he agreed with that immediately. And we thought, what can we do to celebrate the bicentennial away from that? The only reason we didn't want to go to that was there was that Chilean ship that had been a torture ship. So I said, well, Dick, let's try to do some music. So we got Stevie Wonder, who agreed to do it, to close on July 4th. We got someone to put up, I think, 60 or 80,000 to put a hold on the stadium. And we thought that'd be our closing, and Dick would run in with Muhammad Ali at the close of it. And of course, as word spread on that was seen as a black event as opposed to the white event of the tall ships, which we never meant at all, not for a moment. For us, it was that we just didn't want to be celebrating with a torture ship on another event across town. But the politicians in New York called us and said they were canceling that. And so Dick flew in from Columbus, I think, to New York. We met with all the politicians in New York to go over this, and we lost. They would not allow, the government would not allow another celebration beyond the tall ships to occur in New York City because they saw it as a black event, and it wasn't. We just didn't want to be with that Esperanza ship that had been a torture ship. So when Dick entered New York, it worked. We started on April 23rd in Los Angeles. He ran across the country. We entered into the bridge going into New York City on July 4th, and the New York Times gave it top coverage. So all in all, it worked magically. We lost our concert, but that was okay because they didn't want a confrontation. We didn't want a confrontation, and it showed the graciousness of Dick Gregory and how he was committed to the issue of feeding Americans as well as everybody else around the world. and he got to talk to the whole nation, and it worked. It brought him back into the center, and so we were pretty happy with it. And I loved working with Dick. I worked with him for 3 years. I quite often made mistakes. One time I sent him, I think he was supposed to meet with Marlon Brando in the takeover in Milwaukee by the American Indian movement. I sent Dick Gregory to the wrong city for the press conference, and he called me and said, "Jack, thanks for letting me meet new people, but I don't know who these people are. Where's my press conference?" And then one time I lost all his suits. He would, when he was speaking on speaking tour college after college, he wouldn't go home very often. He'd just go from one school to another across the country, and he did that quite often for long periods of time. And he had about 6 or 8 suits, and somehow I lost this on the plane, and used to be able to put it up near the pilot somehow and hook it up there, and anyway, I forgot it or whatever. So I said, "Dick, I'm so sorry to tell you, but I've lost your suits, you know." He said, "Oh no," he said, "that's on United." He said, I'll get 8 new suits from them. I'll be looking great. Thanks." He had such graciousness to work with. I often had a lot of fun with him. And he was great to travel with. And what I did in the period 3 years of working with him before I went off the Peace Corps, I learned how to deal with, because he drew immensely talented people around himself, but most of our meals were paid for by other people. You know, stars would see him, they'd gleam to him, you know. And the funniest one, and I'll close with this, is I always wanted to meet Richard Pryor. I thought he was the greatest comedian I'd ever seen, or ever maybe even see, you know. And so Dick says to me one day, "Jack, I want you to go over and see Richard Pryor for me." And I'm like, "Oh, great." So he said, "Give me 75. Okay, I go over, Pryor's at the door, I meet him. And the funny thing happened with Richard is his mail was in the corner, almost like snow, the big pile of snow. I don't think he answered the mail at all. There was a whole pile of letters there. And I thought that was interesting. So I said, "Richard, you know, Dick sent me over for 75, so, you know, okay." He gives me 75. I go back to Dick Gregory. I hand him money. And he said, "Jack, I meant 75,000. I said, "Oh, oh, oh." I go back to Richard Pryor. He's at the door saying, "This is the dumbest white boy ever invented." He said, "I thought I got away with it." He said, "Okay, here's the check." And he wrote 75,000. I took it back to Dick. We were doing a project that Dick was working on, and all of it was in great fun. And I got to meet the great Richard Pryor. So that's my story of working with Dick Gregory. It was really great fun.
You know, he's playing a joke on it, you know. Wilson joke.
No, he did